Boruto isn't himself anymore. He's starting to push away the people around him. He's emotionless, stoic, all about the mission, much like Koji, who himself cut straight through Inojin, pressing him about his feelings for Himawari, turning emotions into leverage. Meanwhile, Jura studies love like it's data, and the council starts pointing fingers at Boruto, the same guy who just saved lives. And behind closed doors, Shikamaru struggles with politics, Koji hides the truth, and Lord Kobu questions the very future of the Hokage. Just 1 week from now, Momoshiki will strike Konoha, and Daemon vs Sarada is about to begin. A lot is happening, and every decision that led to this point was made because of love. The only question left is, when love itself becomes a weapon, who can you trust? That is what the entire chapter encapsulates, which we're going to get into, but of course, let's start from the top. So the person on the cover is Momoshiki himself, and the title is Passing Through. Now there is some additional text on the page itself, which says at the bottom of hell, the thread descends. With that said, the side text says Inojin recovers from his fatal injury. It seems like Himawari is receiving his favor. We then skip to Inojin paying a visit to Himawari and seemingly gives her some honey. She thanks him for it and he gives her the puppy eyes, then walks away. Now on his way outside, he then meets a toad that calls his name and says that he has a few questions for him. He says there are things that he wants him to confirm. This is just a formality. He already knows the answer. You have feelings for Uzumaki Himawari, don't you? Am I wrong? And of course, Inojin starts to panic and blush, and that alone was enough to confirm the toad's suspicion. He then poses the question, do you want to protect her? And Inojin says, of course, isn't that a given? The toad then says our interests are aligned. If you want to hear the details, come with me. And of course, against all safety procedure and all logic, Inojin decides to go with him because of course, he's being led by love. The thing that forces one to make illogical decisions, as was stated by Jura and as was proven in Konohamaru's fight with Matsuri. But yes, he's then reverse summoned to a different location. And it's then revealed that the person pulling the strings was none other than Kashin Koji. It is important to note that Inojin does know the name Kashin Koji because he attributes it to a member of Kara. So it is possible that he simply read the reports and learned that Koji helped them to defeat Ishiki, and that's why he's not too concerned. Now that's when Boruto pops in because he has to be aura farming every time, and he says, I'm not trying to threaten you, but this place has no physical entrance. In other words, you have nowhere to run. But don't you worry, once we're done talking, we'll let you go without a scratch. And it then shows Boruto just sitting there in his chair with the smoke moving across the screen, aura farming, of course. But we then switch over to the Shinju, and this part I found really interesting. So it shows that Jura is once again crying, and Hidari takes note of this. Jura then wipes his tears and says, this book is considered to be a novel. It is a mere creative work, but honestly speaking, I underestimated it. It seems as though my heart was moved before I knew it. And then Hidari interjects and says, something similar happened to you not too long ago, which of course is referring to when he cried during Matsuri's fight with Konohamaru. Jura then says, those were Matsuri's emotions. Various emotions she felt through her connection with Konohamaru, anger, sadness, and then a glimpse of love. I gained a good deal of knowledge thanks to Matsuri. These tears are the product of that. Is it gross? Hidari then says no, it is quite interesting. Jura then said, that being said, this isn't enough. To truly understand and control love itself, I need more information. But that's when we have the bug Shinju finally speaking, and he says, what a pain. There's way too much of that information stuff. Ada, the woman I made my target. Why my instincts chose her, I think I finally get it. The reason I want to devour her isn't just cause I want her as prey. It's domination. In other words, I want to make her mine. Her superior genetic information, that is. I don't give a damn about love and all that crap. At the very least, us Shinju as a species should prosper. Don't you think? Jura then says, prosper, huh? I see. How interesting. Perhaps that is part of the process to understand love. Now, the reason why I found this very interesting is because it confirms why the bug Shinju is after Ada, and it's kinda different from the others. Whereas with Matsuri it was a kind of romantic love, that isn't the case here. In fact, he outright says that he doesn't care about love itself, so he's being driven by something else. And I think using domination itself makes perfect sense, because we have to remember that the bug Shinju or Mamushi was created using Bug himself, the human, and that guy was, in a sense, dominated by Ada. She was able to override his free will, which in a sense meant that he kinda belonged to her, and that is what Mamushi is trying to accomplish with Ada. He wants her to belong to him. So in some sense, it's like a case of the abused becoming the abuser. You could even call it revenge, but of course, I could be wrong, but we'll see. With that said, we then switch over to Shikamaru heading towards his meeting with the elders. He's then contacted by Kashin Koji using Inojin's mind transmission jutsu. He tells him that the worst possible outcome is that he loses his position as the Hokage, and it's important that he keeps it by any means necessary. He'll give him as much advice as he can, but the end result rests on him. Proceed with caution. Shikamaru then opened the door and is shocked to see the person second only to the daimyo himself in attendance. The elder then said, following your own judgment, you enacted a plan of your own accord. This time it's about the mission to the sand. The official then says that we saw it with our own two eyes. The daimyo questions whether or not your sense of responsibility as the leader of the village is adequate. The very necessity of the shinobi village's survival has been brought up on the agenda quite frequently as of late. Depending on how things go, we won't be able to resolve this with just a mere budget cut. Now Shikamaru then counters or fires back and says, as you already know, currently the village, or rather the land of fire, is under attack by the threat of the Shinju. Unfortunately, they are not an opponent we're able to get through to with mere conversation. You have to call up Naruto, of course, but he isn't here, sadly. But yes, while trying to handle them, I was able to obtain some information. The details of this mission and my selection of personnel were all based on this information. Now, of course, the elders are somewhat curious. They're like, what kind of information is this? But of course, Shikamaru does refuse to divulge, and that pisses them off. He then says that this is for everyone's safety. Its authenticity is rather unreliable, but that being said, this time I chose to rely on my instincts and judged that acting on this information was for the best. I was prepared to take full responsibility in the off chance that something went wrong. The other then chipped in and said, putting aside the topic of the contents of this information, the biggest problem we have is where it transpired. I highly doubt that this is the case, but your informant doesn't happen to be that traitor Boruto, correct? I've heard that he knows about the Shinju's way of life and habits. There's the rumor that he's connected with shady dealings and whispers that confirm those rumors to be highly plausible. Perhaps he were being fed that information in order to enact a secret plan to cause the downfall of Konoha from the inside, so that Boruto can escape and enact his revenge on the village. Now, by the way, Konohamaru is also present in this entire fiasco, so he kinda jumps in saying that that's not how it went. And Shikamaru tried to stop him from doing that, but Koji told him to let him speak. He then goes on to tell them that Boruto saved his life and yada yada yada, which of course they're not gonna care about, and they kinda start to suspect Konohamaru himself. What foolish nonsense. Have you forgotten that he attacked the Hokage? Make no mistake, he's a heinous criminal who is a target for elimination. Now the official then chipped in and said, I will admit, the mission this time managed to be a success. But that being said, the central figure of our village, being a mole working for a criminal, is a different story. In alignment with the safety of the Land of Fire, I cannot help but say that this is a large problem that directly interferes with the prestige of Konoha. He then tells Sai to take Konohamaru away or to take him into custody, and that he'll interrogate him personally. He then says that every person that comes in contact with Boruto will be interrogated, every single one of them. He also notes that during that interrogation back in chapter 14, I believe, he wonders whether or not someone purposefully removed Boruto's restraints. There must be an insider that helped him to escape. We're going to drag him out into the open. And by the way, he kinda turns and looks directly at Shikamaru, which is just kind of funny because Shikamaru is just standing there sweating bricks. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that interaction. Now Inojin is kinda concerned about this because he is working with Boruto, so he'll likely be a target if they do find out. So he wonders if they have to do stuff the way they're doing it, you know, illegally. And Koji explains the obvious, which is that they are being hunted, so obviously they can't just walk into the village and request the information. Boruto is there, of course, you know, still aura farming, and he says, the enemy is a bunch that will use any means necessary. That is why we also have no choice but to adapt the enemy's style. Now is not the time to be worried about formalities. Inojin then says that I understand this because I fought Jura as well. In order to protect everyone from that monster, to protect Himawari-chan, we need firm resolve and strength. And I pointed this out in the spoiler video as well, but Boruto doesn't seem to care that he's into Himawari because he's calling her Himawari-chan and singling out Himawari. And of course, he heard what Koji said to Inojin to get him to come there. So he's aware about what's going on there with Himawari, but he doesn't seem to care. That is interesting. Now Koji then questions Boruto about whether he reached an agreement with Momoshiki, and Boruto says, don't worry, I'll fulfill my role. Koji then says, that doesn't answer my question. I don't like that attitude of yours. Boruto then seemingly gets angry a bit and leans over and says, that is my line. You are the one that hid all the important information. There were apparently supposed to be many deaths on the Sand mission. Koji then says it was the most certain development that would lead to the awakening of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan. That development was more important than avoiding a future where people died. If you have another childish garbage judgment to make, I'll hear you out. Boruto then says it would be a waste of time, so hurry up and move the conversation along. Koji then reaches out to Shikamaru and tells him that as soon as something happens, he needs to tell him. In order to have the advantage in the next fight, Shikamaru needs to be the Hokage. He then tells him that in about a week from now, the Shinju Mamushi will appear. His target is Ada. I'm going to tell you about Mamushi's ability, or rather how to deal with it. Now then switch over to a convo between Ada, Sarada, and Sumire, and she's pretty much asking them when they're planning on confessing their love to Boruto. And Sarada says that she doesn't think Boruto has any time to worry about stuff like that right now, and she's scared about saying something weird and making things awkward. Ada then says, how boring. What about you, Sumire? She then says, I guess it depends on the timing. I might just do it spontaneously. And Ada of course is happy to hear this because she loves the drama. Though I think what people miss is what's really being said here, because Sumire goes on to say, but the most important thing is Boruto-kun's feelings. Just like Sarada said, he probably won't have time for this anytime soon. And the reason why this is important is because she said the most important thing is Boruto's feelings. Now of course, that cannot be the case if they are being affected by Ada, because there's this big misconception that you can't love other people if you're under Ada's influence, which obviously isn't the case, because of course even Shikamaru is affected, but he still goes home to his wife every single day. So how it really works is that once someone is in Ada's vicinity or she's in front of them, she should be the most important thing to them, not someone else. So obviously it can't be the case that Sarada and Sumire are affected by her jutsu. And Ada goes on to say this, you two are both still my captives, aren't you? For you to be sitting in front of me and talking about liking someone other than me, you normally wouldn't be able to do that, ever. And of course, Sarada and Sumire start to panic, and it shows them remembering what Shikamaru told them, that they should never let Daemon figure this out because their life might be in danger. And so said, so done. Daemon then rushes towards Sarada and Sumire, and Sarada then activates Sir Mangekyo's Sharingan, but just not in time to do whatever she was planning on doing to Daemon, because he apparently speed blitzed them and appeared behind them, then grabbed onto both their necks and pulled them in. He then says, "Did you try to do something just now, Sarada? Is this your prized Mangekyo Sharingan? No matter what you try, it's meaningless. It's just a waste of effort if you die before you can see it through." We then get the side text that says, "The high tension, the rush of fear. What will happen to Sarada and Sumire now that their secret has been discovered?" And that is where the chapter itself ends. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think Daemon and Sarada are gonna face off in the upcoming chapter? Or do you think Momoshiki is just gonna come in and split everything up? Or do you think Ada is just gonna tell Daemon to chill out, you know? I know they lied to me, but they're still my people, you know, we're still good. Which, to be honest, I think is most likely what's gonna happen. There's literally no reason for them to fight at this point, but it would be cool to see. So place your bets down below. And also, if you guys like the video, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.